until I can see the live pop up, and I'll start the official broadcast. 1 second. It always comes in with the volume planted too, so if I forget, I hear like an echo. There we go. Perfect. We are live. I'm just going to X out of that. And here we go. Should I get the bio go? All right, here we go. Hello and welcome to the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. As you know, we are facing extreme censorship alongside many other truth seekers out there. If you want to support this show, please go over to mattbelair.com and sign up for the email list. Become a member for exclusive and censorship-free content by donation or for free. And most importantly, consider doing 3 kind acts wherever you are in the world today. Today's guest is a forensic financial economist who appears to be unique in the world. He actually reads the nominal securities that evidence the transactions before explaining what they are and what they mean. He is also an historian of equity, law, and policy. He likewise researches the history and reasons behind the laws before attempting to explain what those laws say and were intended to mean. He says that otherwise, trying to understand modern finance is like playing 5-dimensional chess at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Welcome to the show, Timothy Paul Madden.
Thank you, Matthew.
I'm
glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm so glad to have you on the show. I was struggling through the bio because this is so foreign to me. And as we were saying, like forensic banking and equity, we're having a little chat before the show, but the information that you've been researching is so crucial at this time. And I'm starting to kind of dive into law and legislation and how all of these things in our world are working. Because nobody, as you put in your bio, nobody's reading these things. Nobody's really understanding the architecture of our finances, of mortgages, of how things are actually operating. And that's actually what you do. So I'm very excited to have you on the show. You came highly recommended from Beth Martins, who has an amazing show herself. And yeah, I'd just love for you to share a little bit about your history and who you are with the audience before we dive in.
Okay, well, I was born in Winnipeg a long time ago. And I've lived about a third of my life in Winnipeg, another third in Edmonton, and the final third so far has been in Vancouver Island. I'm here in Victoria now, but I've spent the last 6 years in South Africa doing research into 400 years of English law and history and equity and policy, and how everything converges at a point in history that occurred in 1895, known as the Jameson Raid on Johannesburg. It was Cecil Rhodes and his assistant and cohort, Dr. Jameson. They tried to provoke an uprising in the Transvaal in Johannesburg in order to overthrow the government of the Transvaal Republic. And that would be Paul Kruger. And it was, they call it it led to the Boer War and the rest of it, or the British South African War, as it's called. But it should have been called Truth in Advertising applied back then. It would have been called the War for the Gold and the Diamonds, because that's what it was all about to begin with, And so anyway, I got on the financial track back in 1990 after I took Eaton's to court, which is for those not Canadian or not old enough, Eaton's was a famous department store that had been around for a century, and I had one of their department store credit cards. But it occurred to me one day that they said they're calculating interest in a fraudulent methodology, and I sued them and I won. And my picture appeared on the front page of the Edmonton Journal business section in April of 1990, holding up this judge's decision that said, "Local man beats Eaton's decision could cost billions or could spur claims worth billions. Now, in actual fact, based on the numbers at the time and the simple application of the decision to debt in Canada, it was going to cost the credit card companies and the banks about $100 billion in 1990. It was rather large, but it turned out that back in 1997, they had made it illegal under the federal securities law. And when you go back and you read the debates and everything and the discussions in the House of Commons and you get a good fix on what's the purpose of, it's absolutely clear, it's unmistakable that they intended to prevent exactly what Eaton's had been doing. And exactly the method that they claimed that they were employing now, which is okay. I'll explain how it works. But at any rate, the law in 1897, even though it's a civil law, it's federal securities law, it states that if you do what Eaton's is doing, so they didn't prohibit them directly from doing it, but it said if you do that, you must also declare or disclose the real annual rate. Otherwise, you can collect no more than 5% per annum. Okay, so Eaton's had been charging me, they claimed that the rate was 28.8, but it was actually 32.9. And at that level, the 4.1 percentage point differential was accounting for closing in on 15% of their gross interest revenue on any given day. Okay, so after 6 years, just staying within the normal limitations period, they were going to have to pay back $120 million just on this thing. But if the 5% rule were applied across the country, according to what the law actually says, then Eaton's would have owed $720 million instead of $120 million. And the entire system, the banks especially, would have been looking at $1 trillion right down in refunds in 1990. Okay, so you think, whoa, they were, and we had them dead to rights. Now, the reason is what the bankers use is called what I call they call it the nominal method. They don't call it that when they're telling you. They tell you, for instance, the rate of interest is 20%. And you go, excuse me, Mr. Banker, I did the math and it's actually almost 22%. Why are you telling me it's 20%? And the banker will go, oh, well, that's the nominal annual rate. And you say, oh, I see. It's not the real annual rate. It's the nominal annual rate. And what does nominal mean? Well, it means existing in name only, not real or actual. So I say, well, wait a minute. You've disclosed, you're charging me 22%, but you're telling me it's 20. And when I challenge you on it, you're saying, yeah, it's not supposed to be accurate. It's nominal. And so, at any rate, now what you've got to understand is that what they're using, they call it the nominal method, but it's really a it's an interest rate Richter scale. You know how a Richter scale works for earthquakes?
Not really. Explain it to me.
Okay. The Richter scale goes from 1 to 10. Magnitude 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's uniform, but they will take it in integers anyways. At any rate, a 2 is 10 times as powerful as a 1, not twice as powerful. A 3 is 100 times more powerful than a 1. A 4 is 1,000 times, 5, 6, 7, et cetera, et cetera. So it blows up exponentially, so that if you're looking at that sort of thing. Now, the banker's nominal rate Richter scale works exactly the same way. When the Richter scale reading they give you in the contract says 1% per annum, it's really like 1.09 or something like that. It's just a tiny, tiny little difference that you could arguably be called negligible. Now, but between 1% per annum and 30% per annum on the Richter scale, or the interest rate Richter scale, the relative error or differential increases by 1,000 times. So that it is whatever it is at 1% in terms of how much money it's going to cost you out of your pocket, it's 1,000 times greater at 30%. So what they're doing is they're telling you, well, Eaton's was telling me it was 28.8, which is the Richter scale reading, but it was really 32.9. And you can see that difference is huge now. And then, of course, every time, now, if they overcharge you by 15% today, meaning if I pay $100 on the account and they say, well, the interest charge is 115, so I pay 115 and it should have only been 100. Well, that $15 differential, they will charge you interest on it forever. See, and from their position, now you say, well, wait a minute, what if you pay the account off? Well, okay, so you'd pay the account off, but the money is still in their pocket and they're charging somebody else interest on it or using it for leverage. So they will continue to acquire interest on that overcharge today forever. And then they'll overcharge me again tomorrow by the same amount and the same and the same. And you see how it starts to pile up very, very rapidly. Now, so that's between 1% and 30%. It goes up exponentially, but it's still only a minor fluctuation. We're still only like a 2 on the Richter scale. Now, above that, it starts to get silly really quickly. So that by the time you're dealing with a typical payday loan in Canada, where the payday lender is telling you that the interest rate is 300%, that's the interest rate Richter scale reading. But the real interest rate that corresponds to it is 30,000% per annum and not 300%. And the government is aware of this, but they are allowing the payday loan companies to pauperize the working poor at 30,000% per annum to keep them poor and politically powerless for its own sake as a matter of policy. It's not a mistake. They know what they're doing. And you've got, so there's, like say, there was a one that on the CBC website article I noted, it said, how much do payday loans cost? They are among the most expensive ways to borrow money. And then they give you and they say, according to the Canadian, what do we call the financial watchdog agency, you need to be very careful because $300 for $400 due in 10 days, so the $100 interest charge on a $300 loan over 10 days is 435% per annum, okay? They don't even have the guts to tell you the full reading on the Richter scale, which is 780 or 870, I beg your pardon. They give you exactly half by using loan fees, which is ridiculous, but they're saying, oh, yeah, we're going to charge you $100 interest on that $300 you're going to get in your hand today, and the interest rate is 870%. But here's what we're going to do: we're going to take that $100. We're going to give you the same $100, but then you're going to give us $50 of it back right now today as a loan fee, and only have to pay us the other $50 in 10 days. So you get 300 today for 400 in 10 days. Well, that's exactly what I got before. Oh yeah, but now the interest rate's been cut in half to 435%. And you go, what? It doesn't matter. The point is that the actual interest rate on the real transaction corresponds to 180,000% per annum. It has nothing to do with either 435 or 870. And yeah, well, see, the thing is, people don't understand what's happening because they don't know what a rate of interest is. It's the rate at which the monster grows. And it's like, okay, if I've got an investment for you. You're gonna invest in me $100, and I'm going to pay you 100% a month return on that investment. But here's the deal. Now, you have to take it at $100 per month. You can't roll it over or leave it in the account. So I'm going to pay you $100 at the end of every month for a year on a $100 investment. And at the end of the year, I will have paid you a total of $1,200 of interest. Okay. But if instead I let it ride and such that I don't pay you any interest until the end of the year, then I will owe you $409,500 of interest, because it goes from $100 to $200 to $400, $800, $1,600, $3,200, $6,400, $12,800, $25,600, $52,000, etc., and then up to 400. Well, 128, and then 256, 409, anyways, is the 409,000% per annum is the interest rate. But what you have to realize is that whether I pay you $100 a month for 12 consecutive months or 400,000 at the end of the year, the interest rate is exactly the same. You have to understand that it's like the difference between the difference between speed and acceleration. Most people know there's a difference. Well, like speed is one thing, but acceleration is something different. You feel it in your back as the car is accelerating, and especially if it's a very fast car, and or a very quick car rather. And so, at any rate, when you look at what's going on in terms of the macro thing around the world, this methodology they're using of this nominal rate Richter scale, they overturned my decision against Eaton's, because somebody figured out fairly rapidly after I won that, this is already illegal for 100 years almost, or not over 90 years. It's a solicitor negligence problem. Say, Eaton's would have turned around and sued the lawyers, their own lawyers on Bay Street in Toronto, for negligence, because for failing to advise them, you can't do that anymore. And they made it illegal in 1897. And it wasn't, it was still a valid law that had been there all along. And go ahead.
Well, man, my mind is already blown and trying to keep up. The first analogy that I could think of is, when they'd ask you the question, do you want like $1 million now, or a penny doubled every day for 30 days?
Yeah. For 30 days, take the penny.
Yeah. Right. And so, so there's so many different ways we could go with this. You sent me, a PDF that you wrote that's a general theory of financial relativity that I want to definitely get through to have a deeper understanding. But I think for the podcast, what I kind of want to throw at you is the biggest questions and see what you want to speak about. So the first thing would be, what does the everyday person need to understand about like their own financial well-being? And then the second question is, on a world scale, how is this all working? Because when I was researching, you hear about the Rockefellers and the international bankers and how they would lend out more interest and they wouldn't have any gold or silver and they got run out of town. But then they started conquering the entire world through basically the same scheme that you're sharing now. And so I'm just curious if you can kind of break that down in layman's terms, what's actually happening now, because I heard what the push is now is to go to a digital currency. So then when it goes there, it's like completely meaningless. You know what I mean? And like you said, and like you said at the beginning, people aren't aware of this. So they're getting loans and they're not calculating how much they actually have to pay back. So they're staying poor and they have to work harder and longer, and they get sick and they don't have time to, research or eat well or do anything like that. And I've said for a long time that when I began researching what's going on in the world, I was like, money is the new financial form. It's the new slavery, right? You wouldn't work 40 hours or 80 hours if you didn't have to get those coupons. And then I'm just, as in money, I call the money the coupons. Mm-hmm. And now they're all the American currency is like a debt note, right? Like it's not even it's just another piece of debt paper that you have to pay back. It was actually meaningless. So I don't know how to phrase all that. So maybe you can kind of give us a big picture and then a macro picture to empower people. Micro picture.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you where we're going with all this. Okay. First of all, there is no money. There's only what banks do not loan money. They are not money lenders. They are credit reinsurers. Okay, and now you're gonna, with that, You may not get it right away because it's it flips the entire world upside down if you understand it. But I've been living with it for about a year now, and it keeps getting stronger. Once the bug is there in your head, you can't let it go, and you eventually you'll get it, and you go, oh, that's impossible. I've been ripped. I've been robbed blind for all of my life. And at any rate, what happens is the bank, when you sign and issue a promissory note and secured by a mortgage, you are advancing real estate secured credit to the bank. The banker strips off all of the security as a premium for itself and issues back or reinsures unsecured credit to you. See? The banker arrives at the transaction with nothing, and yet he leaves with 4 times as much as the loan is worth. It's not a loan, it's a credit reinsurance transaction. And that started probably in earnest in 1913, which most people know as the Federal Reserve came into. But that's when it all got organized. And the bottom line is that all of the courts and the governments have all acknowledged sufficient facts and law that all of the debt everywhere in the world is not only void, but the bankers owe a refund of everything that you've ever paid them. And there's a convergence of law and equity on it. The law says the same thing as what equity says, because the reality is that well, this is what I said about people not reading the securities. See, for 30 years, nobody's read these things. And so the bankers all go, or the solicitors say, well, why don't we add a little something here for ourselves? They're not going to read it anyways, and it's so we can cheat in the markets. And they're not going to read it anyway, so what difference does it make? And then you add another, and another, and another. And then at the end of 30 years, somebody looks at the documents, somebody like me, and says, wait a minute, you've got over 36 direct domestic criminal law and international money laundering violations on the face of the securities. See, everything started in 1980, 81, when the government of Canada revived the practice of what's called non-abstonte, or notwithstanding, or dispensation, and which the Crown in Right of Canada, the English Crown and the Crown in Right of Canada, had sworn off in perpetuity in 1689 under the Bill of Rights, that it would never again, in perpetuity, assert a right to give selective permission to its friends to violate the law. And that's what Canada did. It said, but it not only did so, it also did so and extended it into the criminal law realm, where no one had been brazen enough to ever even try it before. So they take this little or this major thing that started a civil war back in the 1600s in England, which was the king giving dispensation, meaning he's selling the right to violate the law to his friends. So as part of the revolution, when the crown got its throne back, they had to agree in perpetuity under a contract with the people called the Bill of Rights that they would never do that again. So for 300 years, and then government of Canada comes along in 1981 and says, and creates, in order to get rid of the limitation on the credit card debt, they had to agree to an amendment to the criminal code to provide for a criminal rate of interest in Canada, which is anything over 60% per annum. Now, if you take interest in advance, that's over 60% per annum. Like, for example, if you take 5% loan fee for 1 day as a rake off from the proceeds, that's an interest rate of about 4.2 billion%. So if it were a virus, you'd be dead within, say, 20 days. And so you say, well, that's crazy. How can it be 4.5 billion%? It's like saying, it doesn't matter that you'd be dead in 20 days. It's still an annual rate of growth. It's constant. And so at any rate, I mean, it's the same thing. If I come onto anybody's, if I go to any competent doctor and I say, I've got a virus here that grows at 33% every 14 days. What's its annual rate of growth? Well, they're all going to tell you it's 180,000% per annum. But the bankers, and only the bankers, will tell you, no, that's 870%. It's nominal. Trust us. But which would you rather have, 870% or 180,000%?
And is this so? Is this how they're doing all of the the mortgages or credit cards, or is it just some of them? Or because
it's what happened was that when they overturned my decision at the Supreme Court of Canada fully and finally in 1995, but in late, maybe it was 93. Yeah, because we were going, and then the Ontario Court of Appeal after the Supreme Court and back and forth and all this other stuff. But at any rate, about 3 months before we first went to the Supreme Court of Canada on it, I discovered that the Canadian method, the nominal method, had been made criminal fraud and banned in the UK in 1974 on the grounds that it's false and seriously misleading. So to answer your question, it's banned in the UK as criminal fraud, but all the Canadian judges pretend they don't know what I'm talking about. You put the stuff in front of them, they can't see it. They won't see it because they're all lawyers and they're all personally liable for the damages. So there's no.
And this goes to admiralty and maritime law versus common law or something like that. And
absolutely.
And so one of the things I've kind of started to wrap my brain around looking into this is that, and this is how I kind of understand it. And you said it's back to the ship. So admiralty and maritime law is the law of the sea, right? Yeah. And then there's the law of the land. Well, what's happened? Okay, correct me. Okay, correct me first, and then I'll keep going.
The law of the sea means the law of commerce. Okay. Is the dominant theme of that. But you're right. It's maritime law, law of the sea, but they're really talking about commerce.
Right. And so, okay, so when right, because you're commerce with the ship, when the ship docks and you want to make commerce for whatever cargo they have, right? So what's happened over time is it's kind of like pirates. They've come in with these different legislations and different things. And when you go to a court, they're all in on it. They have their own language. They have their own understanding that they literally have their own language. And when I finally understood what was going on, it's like, I was like, why can one word mean two things? Like in the Black's Law Dictionary, person means monster, right? Yeah. And they write it with all caps. And that's why we basically, Babylonian speak or whatever, we don't understand what's happening. So we assume it's the same definition, but it's not. So they're kind of in on this thing, and it's all to do with money, paying a debt to the judge, and they kind of are all in on this racket. And now the banks are kind of into this system as well. Right. And we're just not in the cool guys club, and we have no idea what's going on. And so we're basically going there as the peasants, just paying, and we're sitting in confusion and also bondage and slavery because we have no idea why we keep paying Caesar, we keep paying the government, and we're like, something is wrong here. We can't get ahead. And even when in Canada, when you get ahead a little bit, right, then they tax you like every single way that you can. And so it's nearly impossible to move forward. So maybe, is that accurate somewhat?
Yeah, to a certain extent. Yeah, you've got it exactly right. Actually, you can't win in court. I've never seen anybody do it in 30 years. Nobody ever wins. And you think, that's odd. Why is it that nobody ever wins? It's because what's happening now, I just delivered this 90-page or 200-page document on these mortgage brokers here in Victoria to the RCMP Commercial Crime Division. And it was like at least 24 prima facie domestic criminal law and racketeering offenses. And we sent these things out about 2 weeks ago, and it came back on I shouldn't say that. No, 3 weeks ago. And on a Friday, they got it delivered by registered mail first thing Monday morning. It's probably about 9 a.m. And this thing was like 250 pages long altogether. And within 2 hours, I got a call from the woman who said she was the woman in charge of the commercial crime division with the RCMP. And I said, what? She said, yeah, I've read your report here, and I just calling to let you know that we're closing the file on it and that it's a civil matter. And so what is that? See, the thing is that it can only have one because of the factual situation. What
could you repeat that? The internet cut out. It could only happen.
The only thing that it could mean, what she told me that it is a civil matter, was she was telling me that the RCMP do not have the capacity to arrest a lawyer for a commercial thing, or anybody who's been advised by a lawyer. And the only thing that makes sense is that one arm of the crown cannot arrest somebody working for another arm of the crown. And what you don't realize is that the Bar Association and the Crown are one and the same. That is what I've concluded after 30 years of research. Like just encountering it tangentially and stuff. It's not really an area of my own dedicated research, but at the end of the day, you can't reach any other conclusion other than the English Crown and that meaning the City of London, and the Bar Association is an arm of the Crown, or the same, or one and the same. The RCMP in Canada is the same. The Queen in Canada owns all the land. You can't own land in Canada. You can only get the use of it for a period. But it's all of it, the mineral rights, everything is the personal property of Elizabeth Mountbatten, or whatever name she was born with, or Elizabeth R. But of course, that's really the financial mecca, the City of London. But they're the guys who are. So if none of these guys can, and everything that I've found over the last 30 years is consistent with the conclusion that the courts do not have the capacity to charge a bank with a crime, or even look into it in a civil decision. And so they ignore it. And sooner, and in year after year, they've just piled one offense against another. And they said, oh yeah, you got to go back. The most important one is the criminal interest rate, the rate of conversion, which is by doing this in advance. And they knew that what they were doing at the time. And they said, well, what about a standby fee, Senator? This is in the banking hearings before the criminal code was amended. They said, the rate of interest being infinite would surely be above 60%. Could not the bank be charged with receiving interest at a criminal rate under this new law? And the reply was, theoretically, yes, Senator. That is why this section of the criminal law is somewhat unique in that it requires the express consent of the Attorney General before a criminal proceeding is initiated, thus preventing the application of the section to those commercial practices to which it was not intended that it apply. Okay, in other words, the bankers don't like it, and they have, so they said, okay, so that was the revival of dispensation, giving the Attorney General, the Queen's representative, the right to grant dispensation by not prosecuting for criminal offenses, which is absurd, and ridiculous. It would be like, well, you come up with some pretty nasty analogies, but of looking the other way. Well, one class of people is assaulted criminally, while another is not. So this all went on for 10 years until 1990, and it just was started. There was just this embarrassing sequence of decisions by the Supreme Court of Canada and the appellate courts across the country for a decade, as they tried to protect the banks by these ridiculous interpretations of this new criminal interest rate law. And then they finally got boxed into a corner in 1989 when the Ontario Court of Appeal, which is populated almost entirely or exclusively of former bank lawyers who were appointed by a former bank director and lawyer, which is Brian Mulroney. I don't know if you remember him.
But I do, yeah, Brian Mulroney.
Yeah. Well, Brian Mulroney was sold to the public at the time in early 1980s as a labor lawyer for the Iron Ore Company of Canada. Okay, and that's what how he was presented to the public. But he was also, and they don't publicize this, but he was also, for 2 years before becoming prime minister, he was a director of the CIBC. And so, his co-director on the board was Conrad Black, who helped with the financing of the political campaign. So anyways, Mulroney is invited to the board of directors of the CIBC, spends 2 years, 82, 83, on the thing, and then he steps down in mid-1983 and becomes, runs for the Conservative Party and wins the election, becomes prime minister, and for the next 8 years, he appoints nothing but big-time Bay Street bank lawyers to all the appellate courts across the country. I shouldn't say nothing but predominantly, and certainly a misrepresentative sample. So basically, you've got maybe 1 in X number of thousand Canadians is a big-time bank lawyer, but all of our appellate court judges happen to be big-time bank lawyers. See, what are the odds of that happening by chance? So anyways, the point is that they ran into a problem because the interest rate was 145% per annum on the deal. The finance company that was on with a middleman, actually, they had obtained their funds or got reinsurance from the CIBC, and then they passed it on to the so-called borrower, but with a $45,000 kickback under the table back to the lawyers and the middleman in order to conceal the criminal rate of interest. So, and they sent the records of it by mail, which is mail fraud. You've got like literally, you could probably find 2 or 3 dozen. There was at least 14 major domestic criminal law and what are called racketeering offenses or designated offenses now. It used to be called enterprise crime offenses or organized crime offenses. And so rather than deal with that, because the lawyers would have been responsible, and they said, oh yes, and the parties, there's no question that the lender, as they called it, the Thompson Associates, the middleman, it violated the criminal law, Section 347, by entering into an agreement to receive interest at a criminal rate, which was 145%, but they didn't say that. They'll always say, well, it was more than 60%, but they'll never say the actual number because the criminal law requires the correct mathematical formula and not the Richter scale. So, which screws everything up for them as well. At any rate, to get these guys, the CIBC and this big-time financier named William E. Thompson on Bay Street, and they had committed 14 criminal law and racketeering offenses. They got caught, and they insisted on suing the guarantor anyways, even though he wasn't the borrower. He was just given a gratuitous promissory note as a guarantee for the company, and so they sued him on that basis alone, and the unanimous panel of the Ontario Court of Appeal ruled that there is no question that the plaintiff had violated the criminal law by entering into an agreement to receive interstate criminal rate. However, the criminal law only says you will be expressly punished if you will be severely punished if you do this. It does not expressly state that you shall not do it. And therefore, what the bank and the others had done was clearly criminal. It was not fundamentally illegal. And they enforced it 100%. They gave the plaintiff they found that he had violated the criminal law, but they gave him 100% regardless on the grounds that the criminal law is not fundamentally illegal. Because it doesn't say don't do it. It merely says you'll go to jail for 5 years. See, if you were already in a psychiatric ward you wouldn't be getting out anytime soon if you persisted with that story. And for good reason. But they set a precedent. Now, 30 years later, nobody has said anything about it except to add more and more. Like within a matter of a very short period, there was another 50 decisions all saying, that's right, it's not fundamentally illegal, not fundamentally illegal. The courts now, after 500 years, we can enforce criminal contracts and we can recognize violators of the criminal law and pirates, murderers, anybody, and grant them standing before a civil court in order to claim damages from the other party. So now, if your getaway driver shows up late for a bank robbery, you can sue him in civil court for the losses you may experience from it.
That's insane. So, okay, so what I'm hearing from this, of what I can understand, and some people will be more astute than me, and others are probably trying to keep up. It sounds like there's no remedy to this. It sounds like, I think a lot of people recognize that there's something wrong. There's something unjust with what's happening, and these high-level criminals are able to get away with it. So how do you see this operating worldwide? Is there a remedy? And can the individual person empower themselves to either avoid this? Like I've heard of some people, like in Australia from Solutions Empower, being able to discharge a mortgage because they actually don't lend you any money, or something like that.
You lend them money. You are the creditor who advances them money, and it says so in the mortgage.
That doesn't even make any sense. So is it possible for the individual to empower themselves to kind of exit this? So maybe.
Oh, absolutely. But in a way, you see, don't waste 30 years. Well, I didn't waste 30 years of my life, but I'm saying you don't have to relearn the all the stuff, because I've already gone through it. And that's why I've set up Wherex, which is the Wherex.org, which is the World Equity Repository and Exchange. And I don't know if it's
can you spell it?
WEREX.org.
Okay, so I've heard many different things, and you can kind of let me know what's accurate, what's not accurate. I think for the people listening to this, there's going to be two fundamental questions. One, worldwide, like, are these people just criminals, and what's the solution to taking out these criminals? Because they are like these evil systems. And then the second thing, if we can't take out the evil system, how can we circumvent and have our own empowerment? Because I have heard you can discharge a mortgage, which that doesn't make any sense to me. And then some people say, taxes are illegal, and I've just seen a lot of people go to jail for that. So you probably don't want to go down that route. But I don't know. When I understand the law, it's like you could go to court and win, but these people are so corrupt that they'll just enforce it anyway, or kind of like do some sort of shady enforcement. So how do we empower ourselves, and how do you see this working globally?
Okay, first of all, you got to understand that the judges in the system are not corrupt. They're what I call, they are professional schizophrenics who believe what is ever necessary for the answer they need, and they genuinely believe it. So when you start explaining this not fundamentally illegal thing to a judge, I thought at first it was guilty conscience. He didn't want to hear about it. But what I finally clued into the fact that they really didn't understand what was wrong with it. They thought it was right. Well, see, because lawyers they're trained in the art of deceiving humans by stringing together statements that are not categorically false. Okay, so you'll get, and that's what their masterwork, the masterpiece was the decision in Thompson, where the criminal law only says you will be severely punished. It does not expressly prohibit such behavior. The penalty is severe. It is intended to discourage such behavior. Just one statement after another that is not categorically false, intended to reach a false conclusion, not fundamentally illegal. See, but they're trained in how to do that, and that's why the world is we are actually facing an existential crisis. We may go extinct because the people at the top really are professional schizophrenics. They're the decision makers, and they genuinely and sincerely believe whatever is necessary for the answer they need. And I see it, and when you sort of shake them out of it, and they suddenly look at it, I say, well, no, Your Honor, look at it from this from over in this perspective instead of from over here where you've been looking at it, and you'll see the bank is violating 20 different federal statutes and criminal law and racketeering, and you see the look, they go, they finally get it. And they realize that they've been in a stupor their entire lives, and nobody's ever said, oh, it's not money lending, Your Honor, it's credit reinsurance. And then you show them that there's like there's only like, it's really confusing, it's rife with contradictions and stuff that doesn't make any sense. You may get like a 40 to 50% coefficient with the money lending business model. But if you say, no, this is credit reinsurance, you get a 99% plus correspondence. Everything is accounted for. Everything makes sense. Everything is exactly what you label it when you check to see if this is, what's going on. Whereas these guys, everything in the money lending business model, it's just nothing. It doesn't make any sense. And they know. But you see, what you have to realize is that at the same time, when they made this decision on not fundamentally illegal, it had to be nuts because they were broadcasting policy to the legal profession. See, you can't, you had 13 consecutive judges, from the trial judge to a three-judge panel of the Ontario Court of Appeal, and then a 9-judge panel of the Supreme Court of Canada refused leave to appeal, which is the same thing as agreeing with the unanimous Ontario Court of Appeal decision. But you had a total of 13 judges, and over a period of careful consideration, and every one of them came to the same conclusion, or nobody said anything different or dissented from the opinion. They all agreed that that was a right decision, that criminal acts are not fundamentally illegal when committed by bankers, lawyers, and their financiers, or the people in the middle. And you're going, that's a little sus, but they actually believe it, but they don't. And what you're saying, it's they, on the one hand they do, on the other hand they don't, but it depends on which of them you're dealing with. And the reason the language gets split up is because we, as humans, we have a right brain and a left brain, and there's only two other creatures on the planet that have a right brain and a left brain, and that's chimpanzees and orangutans and humans. And what it does is it gives us this marvelous ability to triangulate reality through language. And take for example the word principal in the financial sense. Now, is the amount of principal the actual amount loaned by the lender and received by the borrower, or is it the amount the borrower has to agree that they owe regardless of the amount they actually receive? Is principle a noun or fact, or is it an opinion or adjective? You look it up. I've got over 100 dictionaries of various signs. That's what I do. I read dictionaries. And it's actually more exciting than you might realize. But
well,
if I can say that.
I'm becoming familiar with the Black's Law Dictionary because there's a separate language, that these people use, and that's happening in the court. And if you don't know what it means, then you're going to kind of be out for some trouble. So, well, I'm following on as much as I can.
Yeah,
because,
it's
it's dense stuff. So, well, I guess like this is specific to Canada, and it does seem so overtly corrupt and criminal with not a lot of remedy for the people. What do you see going on financially around the world? A lot of people are talking about a potential crash. And is there a remedy to these? It seems like the bankers are outside of law because there's no institution like RCMP in Canada, FBI in the States, whatever it might be in the UK. There's no institution that's going to go get these, billionaires, trillionaires, whatever they have, because they own the whole financial sector. So what is a human being, what can they do as a remedy to kind of opt out of this? Some people think cryptocurrency is the way with Bitcoin. Some people think the resources like actually silver and gold backed is an idea. But what can the everyday person do to understand this? And like, what do they need to know to make smart financial choices? And what do you see happening around the world with the system at large?
Oh, well, what I think they're going to do is they're going to try and just they're going to cancel all the debt and sell it to the public as this massive forgiveness, and the bankers are taking the hit and all this, and it's absolute nonsense. They want to, the debt is totally void anyways, but what they want to avoid is an accounting and an audit that will reveal all of the theft that's been going on for hundreds of years. And when that happens, well, who knows what's going to happen. It doesn't matter how much stuff you get on them. Once it gets in front of a court, the judge just goes, these are not the droids you're looking for. Move along.
Is this kind of similar to like what I've heard with the IMF saying like the World Economic Forum, like you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. Basically, like we're going to forgive that. I've seen something in Canada where like the World Economic Forum, quote unquote, bails us all out, but we actually don't own, like you said, the land in Canada. You don't own it. You have a privilege to be on it for some sort of period of time that you pay for. So it's just so far removed from natural living and fairness and equality and truth and justice. It's kind of obscene. And so I guess what could the everyday person do, and what could humanity do to right this wrong if it's so corrupt that no institution will enforce it? Or could we just opt out and build something new and just not even participate in that and say, I'm not even dealing with you, I'm going to do something else, I'm going to build something better?
That's what Wherex is about.
Oh, all right, well, explain.
Okay. What I did was you won't understand all of this, but I've done my research and I know what I'm talking about. And that is that there's something called what I've done is I've declared an equity lien and salvage on $150 trillion worth of financial instruments worldwide. It's the U.S. All different home, whether it's Canadian dollars, American dollars. It's all got if you convert it all to American dollars or U.S. dollars, it'd be about $150 trillion for the mortgage debt. That's so far. That's what all I'm talking about. Now, so what I've done is recognized that it was obtained by fraud or false pretense, which means that everybody knows what a legal title is, or they think they do, but there's also an equity title to everything of any substantial value has two titles to it. You've got a legal title and you've got a use title. And the same applies to even money. Cash has both the use title and a legal title. And so if you have what's called an assignment of rents, because you've got a commercial, you got a mortgage on, I'll say, an apartment building or a hotel or something like that, they take what's called an assignment of rents. And that gives them a legal title to your gross cash flow revenue from the business. Now, they take that assignment of rents and they use it to make other investments in the global financial system on the world markets and stuff. So the bank's getting not only the mortgage payments, it's also getting the title to all of the gross cash flow that runs through the business. And the bank gets the legal title to wager with in the financial markets, whereas the so-called borrower gets the use title of the same money in order to pay the mortgage payments and the staff and the taxes and the water and the lights and the electricity and what have you. See? So everybody forgets about everybody confuses the two all the time to begin with. But at any rate, the thing is that they overlook the technicality and a reality more than anything. And because it's criminal and fraud, in fact, the bankers see, the bankers never had any legal right to it because of that, and the issuer of the promissory notes, or the issuers of the mortgages, for the most part, are not even aware that there is such a thing as an equity title, and that's why, to the securities itself. And so that's what means it's constructively abandoned. And so because I found it in an abandoned state, I had, and because I know what it's worth, that gives me a moral, legal, and actual obligation to claim it, put it into trust for its rightful owners, and claim salvage on it. And that's what I've done. So everybody can just, you've got a common currency for the world that is the terms of association are strictly between and among beings of conscience and not legal entities. So we can have 7.8 billion people as a member of a big club that can decide on what rules it wants. And what things can we do for ourselves so that we don't have to put this burden on government to do it for us? If you follow that.
Okay. I think honestly I followed that maybe like a very small amount, but I'm going to throw back my understanding and hopefully other people understand as well.
Okay.
So I remember, I don't know if you're familiar with this Russell J. Gould character. Very fascinating. Something about the United States going into bankruptcy and then him noticing it. And then he was able to capture the flag or something, become the postmaster general. Way beyond my comprehension, but it was interesting to see that he was doing going in the courts for years, and he's had like, you know, a history of him in these courts and kind of understanding what's going on. So that's kind of similar to what I'm hearing you say. So you recognize this flaw in the system, and as I am looking and really have just such a rudimentary understanding of maritime law, admiralty law, what's going on here, but what's become very clear is that it is a criminal system. Like the world in our governing system is criminal. Like I knew that before, but now I know it more, and how inner workings and all that kind of thing. So what I'm kind of understanding is that there is truth, like there is true things out there and true value. And the way that they're doing this is through deception. And sometimes, you know, some other things like, you know, other tools, you know, basically ignoring the facts, like when you go to court and then they're, you know, misinterpreting terms and still, you know, not making the right calls or claims. You have found a remedy that you can kind of share with everybody else by acknowledging this. And so, okay, so what is the likelihood that we would actually experience that so we could overcome this criminal system? Because I imagine that they're not going to want to let that happen. And then how might people participate in the remedy or solution for themselves and their family and for other people? Because when we got on the call here, you were saying I'm helping somebody who's going through a foreclosure. And when you looked at The Big Short, right, and what the banks did there, and we know these criminal bankers, and you can go back in history with the Rockefellers and those certain families, they're using it to control countries, to control governments, to control policies. And they're way above law and government, and that needs to stop, right? So we need to bring it, the power back to the people. And I heard back in the day, like when they started doing this, like with the gold and the silver, with the lending, they kind of ran them out, like they burned it down, right? But then they just popped up another one because people, they're not on their toes, especially nowadays. People are very, what's it called when you're kind of like comforted? We're docile. You know what I mean? We're being, I don't know, like placated, just, you know, distracted. Right. And meanwhile, we're getting kind of sheared by this thing. So I'm kind of ranting. I don't know how to ask a very clear question, but how do people participate in this? And what is the likelihood that this could actually be accessed or used in Canada? And then I guess what would that mean? How would that change things? If I have a mortgage or I'm massively in debt or this criminal system is active, how would that use it? And then I'll throw one other confusing thing in there for people. But I heard on your birth certificate, they trade it on the open market and it's worth, you have a title worth lots of money back there by your living birth. And that's where they're actually getting this money from. And so some people say, well, there's money on your birth certificate, but that's where they're accessing all this stuff from. So I don't know if that's a separate thing and you're aware of that, or if that plays into this. Because it's basically debt, right? Like we're all just in debt, so we're working like crazy. We can never pay it off, and the system is rigged that we're never going to pay it off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So,
well, as I said, you see, I tend to look at the macro stuff before I just start trying to fine tune stuff. And that is that if you go back 75 years ago to the end of World War II in 1945, we here in Canada were fewer than 12 million people in possession of 1/10 of the planet's diverse natural resource wealth. We should be like Saudi Arabian sheikhs. Every one of us should be a millionaire in terms of the trust that should be behind us, because of just the fact of it. And South Africa's close to that too. There are only 60 million people, and South Africa's a pretty sweet piece of real estate.
And that's why there's so many wars, right? Like China and the States, and not to go on a tangent here, but my friend Bear was telling me a story about making friends with the guy who started a private bank, and it grew, and he ended up actually getting assassinated because he was showing a government in Africa how to handle their own resources, but these battling countries wanted those resources so badly. So that's when they throw in military. You've got Confessions of an Economic Hitman and what they do through the finances. And so it really all is about resources. So I'll just kind of throw that in there.
Yeah. You're for sure. It's most certainly everything's always about resources. They're fighting over and this sort of stuff. But the thing is that what we have is a situation where everybody is maleducated to not see what's important and other things. It's like the credit cards. Okay, do you know that like Visa and MasterCard, they take a small fee they charge to the merchant, according to their official story. So if you want to be a merchant and you want to accept Visa or MasterCard, you have to agree to give a price discount to your card users, so that the card company issuer can collect a concealed credit charge at the end of the grace period, while getting its cardholder to believe there's no such credit charge. They're getting a free loan. See, so they force the merchant to give a price discount, and it's like 3% for MasterCard, 4% for Visa, and 5% for American Express. See, so here's the question: when they're challenged on it, they call it a small transaction charge to the merchant to cover the costs of processing the transaction. Okay, that's the official story. So here's a question for you: which do you think is greater, the aggregate budgets of the U.S. military, NASA, the NSA, and the CIA combined, or the total of these small transactions charges that are taken at any given time, over a year?
Well, I would think the military and NASA and all that, because it's massive. But
you're out by about half. The Visa and MasterCard banks are skimming approximately $1.5 trillion every 2 years, or about $1 trillion every 18 months.
Is this like the Superman movie thing? Remember that one where he's just like taking a little bit off every transaction? You remember that?
No, very vaguely.
Yeah, it's just like something they figured out a way to like trim like 1 cent off every single.
Oh yeah, no, these guys there's the Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover, all of these credit and charge card companies alone, they take a total of about globally, the USD equivalent of $2 billion a day. Okay, it's which happens to be the combined gross income of the 1 billion poorest humans. They live on God. See, that's $2 a day, $2 billion a day in the aggregate for those 1 billion people. And it's exactly the same amount that a relative handful of families skim off the global throughput every single day. Sorry, you got 35,000 infants in mortality rate, children under 5 years of age, that die every single day due to disease and mostly due to malnutrition on the same planet where these clowns are skimming $2 billion a day. And that's on top of the $500 billion every 18 months they collect as interest on the called interest on the outstanding balances. So it's like, oh, we have to collect about $1 billion a day in interest on the accounts to cover our $10 million a day in actual expenses. That's 1%. We're only overcharging you 100 times what we're actually spending to run the electricity through the system and the computers that we've paid for with the same skimming that's going on. And you say, well, okay, give me a or what are they're charging you? Like I say, it's about $2 billion a day, and it works out to about $1 trillion every 18 months. And at the same time, they're charging another $500 billion every 18 months, which is, so they're saying, look, we're spending $10 million a day, for which we need $1 billion a day in account interest, plus another $2 billion a day in concealed credit charges as a rake off that you don't know about. You don't need to know about that. And the merchant, if he tells you, we yank his license, because that's part of the contract. You keep your mouth shut about the concealed credit charges, and you tell the customer he's getting a free loan. So keep running those purchases through so we can keep skimming our $2 billion a day off the global throughput. And who gives a rat's ass if 35,000 children a day die because of it? I got my new Mercedes, my new Porsche, or whatever.
Or canoe, spaceship. Jeez.
Sorry, I get a little
that's
pissed off at these people.
Yeah, no, this is insane. So, again, when I go back to like the remedy thing, I think like okay, we need some sort of intergalactic court. But if we're not going to
No. This is, I've come to the conclusion after 30 years, you cannot beat them. So what do? You go around them. And that's what Wherex is about.
Okay, well, good. Yeah, I was going to say that, or the people. You know what I mean?
Yes, like the people. It is. It's absolutely
have
people.
To take out, like Buckminster Fuller's quote, right? You don't fight the fight the old system, you build the new one, something like that.
Yes, exactly.
I really got to memorize that. I use it all the time, and sometimes I get it bang on, and sometimes I butcher it like that. But we need to build a new system. So how do we build a new system, and how do we participate in that? Some people think it's Bitcoin.
It is Bitcoin. No, the Wherex system is developing BEECs. They're called BEEC, which is bonded equity exchange credits. So it's an equity secured Bitcoin, if you will. Okay. So
are the Bitcoin people going to be stoked on this? Or are they going to understand it? Or because I have my understanding of Bitcoin is kind of basic. I get the ledger and there's a certain amount and all that. So is it an upgrade on Bitcoin, or are the Bitcoin people?
Oh yeah. No, Bitcoin to be out of, they won't be out of business, but this is orders of magnitude more bigger, because the thing is that it's all prepaid. You've already been cheated out of the bank. The courts won't do anything, so we have to make our own remedy. And that's just simply recognize the equity title, so that, let's say that you in your lifetime, you've had a total 3 mortgages, and the total principal that you've registered at the, well, actually, let me put it this way. Let's say you had one mortgage for $500,000 3 years ago, or whatever. Well, all you got to do is come to Wherex, and we'll give you 500,000 credits for it. We'll swap it 1 for 1 through the U.S. dollar as the gauge. It's got nothing to do with U.S. dollars. It's just how the measuring device. So if you've got a say a $500,000 Canadian mortgage registered in Toronto, then all you have to do is prove it, and we'll give you 400,000 bonded equity exchange credits in return, and it's all free.
Okay, that sounds great. And then how do I spend it? I can't go to.
That's what we're having to do. I've got a number of ways to do that, but it has to happen all at once, if you will. Because if they know what you're doing, they'll probably hit some resistance. But basically, I've got $150 trillion worth of Bitcoin that I want to give away to people pro rata to the amount of their mortgages, and it's all free. So, and also I've taken the the initial configuration is we come up with a equity, a being of conscience club with 7.8 billion members, and the imputed value of that, if you use the Visa and MasterCard business model over the next 25 to 30 years, will be $56 trillion in market cap at 20 to 1, meaning if you don't understand price earnings ratios and that sort of thing. Okay, if Wherex were on the stock market, it would just the basic infrastructure would be worth, and the business model would be worth 56 trillion US dollars, which we then divide evenly per capita among everybody who's on the system, so that everybody starts with a basic credit of 7,000 credits, $7,000 US.
Okay, well that okay. Well, that sounds, first of all, way too good to be true, and I like it. So how in the world do we make that thing happen, and what kind of time frame, and what would you need? Like how would that participation or adoption work?
I don't know. I've been, like I said, over the last 30 years, I've well, not it'd be my whole life, but I've read about 1 million pages of books. And if you read this stuff,
you're saying a book a week for like 40
years.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Well, it's something that I do, and I enjoy it, and a lot of it is history. What do we got? Oh, I don't know if this is here. Hold on a sec. Yeah, okay. See, like, for example, back in 2003 and 4, about 18 months. I don't know if you can see this, but I read those 30,000 pages of antique law dictionaries.
Jeepers.
And
that put me right to sleep.
Oh, no, but you see, my mind is the type that reading dictionaries and encyclopedias is exactly what I need, because I can jump around from one subject to the next, maybe 2 or 3 times a page. You got different words and different terms, and so for whatever reason, that I was able to get into it. It took me about 1.5 years, but I read all 30,000 pages. And wow. You start, as you're doing it, you start to see connections between things, and I've got a balanced left brain, right brain, so that I can do both the math and the creative stuff. And that's why I say that the trying to understand the modern financial system is like trying to play 5-dimensional chess at the Mad Hatter's Tea Party. Half of it you can go into intricate detail on a scalar process, like the chaos theory, etc. You just keep going down further and further in scalar quantities. But at the other half of it is completely batshit crazy. They just make it up because it's supposed to be. It's like, hey, the people aren't looking here. Let's distract them with something over here. And it became an art form. And I started to recognize the signs of it, and that they were actually professional schizophrenics. And that's what our whole government is. We took 500 years ago or 400 years ago, they said, hey, why don't we take the most common human mental illness called schizophrenia or multiple personalities, and we'll make a government on that business model. And so we'll have the Queen with the Queen and right of blah, blah, the Crown of right of Canada, of New Zealand, Australia. We'll split it up into 30 or 40 different personalities, and then we'll just deal with it like, I mean, what could possibly go wrong? They don't think of it very much. But at any rate, the point is that the Wherex business model is completely sound. It'll blow you away. But the thing is that I'm not an administrator in any sense. I've been doing the reading for 30 years. I've written all this stuff. If you go to Wherex and you want to read 2 pieces, I would read the it's on, I think, the Wherex docs, main docs, and you're looking for the notice of abatement, mortgage payment, mortgage payment abatement. Oh, there it is. Oh, you got it. Excellent. Okay. Okay, go to, which one is it? Notice of equity lien, no. How about Wherex home?
I was just laughing. I was on mute. I was saying I like the rule of law my butt.
Yeah, well, I started the nominal my butt, rule of law my butt, the whole my butt series, but it was it.
What about if I search for it?
We're looking for. I can't understand why this isn't here. Summary notice. Oh, invitation, Wherex docs, flyer, anatomy, general summary, Wherex notice of equity lien. No, let me go to this one.
Oh, it's starting at number 6. Oh, is it go part 1?
Oh, this one goes 1 to 5, and then the next one is 1 to 6. See, I'm not a web guy or anything like that, but I've got it. If you want to read it, maybe I can send it to you directly.
Yeah, I'll do a link up in the show notes. So what did you say it was called again?
It's called the notice of equity abatement. No, mortgage payment abatement.
Is this where you can somewhat discharge your mortgage or not pay it or something?
No, you can't fight the regular system. You can let them know what's going on and that that they know, but most of the people, it's like we're dealing with a relative handful of people who are controlling the whole planet by playing large groups of people off against each other. So right. It doesn't do, you don't want to give the employees at the bank grief, because they're the ones, they're being abused more than we are even. Well, not quite, but pretty much. You can, it drains the energy out of them having to deal with so much deceit and deception all the time. And it really does. It hurts them as people. And, but this other one here, hold on. Finder. Can I turn this on? Yeah, of course I can. Desktop, no, documents, and then we get me, and it's called the Wherex lien statement and report. No. Oh, I don't know. I'll post it on there when I find it here. Got so many different things. No.
So that's all right. Well, we'll get them.
Okay.
We'll direct people. I guess what I'm trying to do is, if people want to participate or try to, help move this forward, what is it they can do, and what would you need?
We're going to need, like I say, we just need people who are willing to read the material, be able to recommend it to their friends and say, wait, if you actually read this stuff, it blows people away, because I am very careful about it. I'm not great speaking about it, but but writing about it, it comes across very, very clear, and people look at it and they go, oh my goodness, I never occurred to me that was what was going on. But once somebody points it out to you, it's easy, it's the easiest thing in the world to see. And you realize, as I say, the matrix is not a computer program. It's a mirror image, because that's how they're getting us. That's how they're tricking our senses. It's the left-right mirror image switch. Even though you can still recognize the people, you go, oh, I know that guy. Oh, wait a minute, there's something wrong. It's because you're looking at a mirror image, and everything that's left is right. And that they've turned that into an art form in finance. And so that they keep robbing you twice and saying it's okay, we made it better with the second time. And it's really, really nuts. But any rate, the thing is that if you read the one is called the Mortgage Payment Abatement Advisory, which will explain why it is illegal for you to make any further payments to the bank because you'll be participating in money laundering. So, and if you read it, you get the whole thing. It's like, it takes about 25, 30 minutes to read, but it'll save you 30 years of research.
So if I read that and I have a mortgage, does that mean I can stop paying it?
No. You don't want to do that, because they'll come after you and make an example out of you.
Right.
And
okay.
So that's why we need large numbers of people. And once you get enough, it'll become unstoppable, because it's solid. There's no smoke and mirrors. It's you're going, wow, I never thought.
Yeah, it's seeing through the deception. And I think how this works is through knowing the truth, right? So it's like, hey,
Right.
like, this is true. This is all facts. It's not conjecture. It's not myth. It is what it is. You can label it all as fact, but there needs to be enough people in that conviction and understanding of the knowledge to then move forward as a unit to get something done. Like with the movements across the world, talking about like, opening everything up. Well, that's only going to work if everybody opens up their shops, everybody stops wearing masks and participates, and we can go back to normal. But otherwise, they're just going to pick out the few dissenters, and they're going to keep going and going. And, people are going to realize, like, it's surprising to me how many people are still asleep and are just listening to everything with the unbelievable amount of deception and stupidity going on, but they're going to keep going. But ideally, enough of us wake up and we have to take an action, because it's going to keep going. It's only going to get worse unless we do something, and we need to participate in solutions. And if enough of us can do that, we are the power. You know what I mean? Humans together are incredibly powerful, and that's what we need to do. We need to get out of this confusion and this system that is just fleecing us, move towards something that's fair and just and good. So I agree.
Well, as I say, I've had three major areas of research, over the 30 years, and they are the nominal method, the credit card business, and the mortgage thing. And each one of them accounts for all debt everywhere in the world independently today. So you make remedy for any one of these three despicably criminal acts and foundational business models that they've been employing for the last 100 years. If you have to do any one of them, if they have to give refunds, all the debt's gone everywhere in the world, and they got to start paying back. But of course, you'll never get that. I mean, it's, on that, the people who set up this system, none of them are alive anymore. They've been dead for 200 years. There's nobody to punish. It's too late. And the people today, they're just riding the gravy train that they were born on. I don't think that there's any, that we have to, as a species, we have to evolve by becoming less. Ever since humans first walked out of a cave, we've been obsessed with and essentially defined by two things, and that is domination and punishment. And we can't. What makes me such a very special human is I am among the very first generation of humans for whom that is no longer a viable business model. We have more destructive potential in every one of us now because of technology, that it is only a matter of time before somebody pushes the wrong button at the wrong time and we're all dead. We must change and get away from coercion as a basic social way of interacting, and if we don't, it doesn't matter what we do. When you look at the relative, I was just writing something the other night about the height of the British Empire in 1830, relatively speaking. And I said, and I wrote there, at somewhere between, it could be 1897, most people think was the pinnacle, was the Jubilee year for Victoria, and but whatever, in that time, you say, well, the British Empire hit its zenith, its absolute highest point as a world power, and it was at the time the undisputed world power and leader, et cetera, but that was relatively speaking. Now today, 120 years later, or 150 years later, the UK or the England and the basic four countries, there are nowhere near as relatively powerful as they were then, but they are massively more powerful in absolute terms. I mean, one nuclear submarine armed with 16 missiles has got more destructive force than the entire British Empire in 1850, even though it was number one at that time. Man, and that's going on every year. Just gets more and more destructive potential, more stuff. So if we don't find a way to change, we don't have a whole lot of time left, because it's just, especially when you look at the clowns running the show. Oh, they're scary. The things they can deceive themselves into believing is just mind-boggling. And so I go off on that thing. So that's what keeps me sane when I get really angry. You want to just beat these people to a pulp, but you can't do that anymore. Sorry, that's not on the agenda anymore, because, well, that's what I was saying. But as far as the system goes, where there is danger, there is opportunity as well. And we have opportunity here to change the system, to say, well, I really don't need you telling me what to do, Mr. Banker, Mr. Politician. We're going to form a group of where the terms of association are solely between beings of conscience and not legal constructs. And there's 8 billion of us, and it's a club, except for the first 20 years, no lawyers are allowed. And that but you'll understand why when you read the stuff on the thing. I'm not doing that vindictively or maliciously, but it's just to safeguard the institution, the new one. You cannot have these professional language manipulators have anything to do with it. And they have to be actively excluded, or at least kept out of they can still have the accounts. But at any rate, you see what would happen though is this $2 billion a day rake off by the Visa MasterCard banks and the other credit charge cards. The purpose is to deliberately cripple small business. See, if you're surviving on a 10% gross margin, then 3% is 30% of your operating profit. It's huge. And and it's because a bank shall not engage in any other trade or business. So they say, oh, well, then we'll just take a rake off as the money system, so we'll get 30% equity interest for nothing. Hey, that works for us too. And but like I say, you've got to. That's what they're doing. Is it's about greed, but it's more about domination for its own sake. They need to dominate, and so they don't want any of these businesses getting out of control. So if you want to. I did a survey in Nanaimo in '97 when I first moved to the island, and the average small business like a haircutting shop or and stuff like that, they were looking at having to pay $75 to $150 a month plus 5% of their gross to get Visa, and man, like 75 each.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, just for the so-called equipment rental. Now, of course, that's a scam and a half of itself, but it's just different way of saying interest. And but the merchant does have to pay for that physically, the $75 or $100 a month. But he doesn't pay for the discounts. He has to give price discounts. See, so it's really, see, if you really understand what's going on. Because they're skimming the $2 billion a day from the payment stream at the end of the grace period, every day they take $2 billion, but and stuff it into their own pockets as interest income. But that $2 billion also doesn't get used to reduce your real balance. So it's really $4 billion a day. And then the merchant, he has to give the price discount to hide the fact that you're getting the concealed credit charges. And so he has to go to his operating account at the margin and borrow money or take credit from the bank at 21%. for another 2 billion a day. So it's really 6 billion a day. if you get your head around that, how it's working. Because if you're a banker, every dollar you spend puts a dollar, or you steal, puts a dollar in your pocket now, and it pays you interest on that dollar forever. Which is why the bankers own everything. There's no way to avoid it. Under this system of credit reinsurance, it turns the banks into asset sinks, and only real assets go in, only unsecured liabilities come out, and now they're reaching the end of the line. They own it all. Everything on earth is owned by the bankers. You just don't realize it. For example, you got people in the States and they'll say, well, what are you talking about? I don't have a mortgage. I don't own any money in my house. Yeah, but what you don't realize is that your county that you live in issued bonds to these international things. They're coming due. And when they default, they're going to own your house.
Oh, that's how that works, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Or rather, in order to forestall that default, we're going to jack your property taxes up until you just leave the state and abandon the property, because you can't sell it, or you'll have to sell it for a song because nobody will pay you what it's worth because of the property taxes that we have to jack up because we made these criminal agreements with these international finance companies who never brought anything to the transaction, but only reinsured the debt we gave them in the first place, or the credit that we advanced to them, which is why people get a little upset once they realize they've been cheated and made it look like idiots, in addition to having all of their wealth stolen. They get a little upset, and
that's insane. Oh my goodness. Well, my brain hurts.
Yeah.
I understand some of it, like the surface level. It's good that, the participation factor, and it's good that, like you said, the opportunities, like when there's great injustice, there's great harm, there's great opportunity for a solution. And then everybody, like wildfire, if it is a tangible solution that makes sense, we can adopt that immediately. And a lot of this, though, I believe requires a little bit of work and a knowledge. You know what I mean? We actually have to put that time in and work together, find these solutions, and understand, to the level of criminality of what's going on, so that we can find a solution, because the ignorance is not going to help us. You know what I mean? It's only going to drive us further into the ground, as deep and, as they can go. We're going to go if we don't kind of wake up,
Yep, absolutely. And I've got my, one thing I should mention is, although I have my, under the law and customs of salvage, I'm entitled to a commission on the salvage of the equity titles, the 150 trillion. So I've claimed 1%. It's normally between 10 and 50, depending on the thing, but the amount is so huge that 1% is plenty. That gives me 1.5 trillion credits that I can spend in order to buy infrastructure for the Wherex itself. See, now imagine what would have happened if Bitcoin would have provided for themselves, or for the company itself, to have a 1.5 trillion Bitcoin slush fund to buy infrastructure. Or it wouldn't have been that much, but let's say they had say $500 billion as a sort of an auxiliary fund, that when Bitcoin hit $20,000 a coin the first time, they could have gone and bought up infrastructure to get it all around the world. Okay. Well, my beaks are that. Oh, the other thing is beaks are if you get 1 million coins in our system, 10% of it has to go into your bonding fund. And under your bonding fund, everyone who's got a seat on the exchange, the Wherex exchange, they agree not to commit any act of common law felony or money laundering or, child molestation, terrorism, what have you. Everybody will agree on a set of rules that you're bonding. And then it's like a whole life thing, so that over time, by not having any claims against your bond, you earn it back, the premium. So you'll eventually get it anyways. But this way you can have things like what I call bonded blog, where you just have to state your facts, and post how much you're willing to underwrite it for. So if anybody wants to say you're full of crap, they have to challenge on your blog, they have to challenge your facts, and you would have to pay damages if they can prove those facts are false. So you can get rid of all this nonsense on the internet about everybody screaming at each other and calling, trolls and all this other stuff, and put your money where your mouth is. And everybody would have money too, because the beaks, see, like I say, it's all prepaid equity, because the banks have already stolen the 1.5 trillion. They just forgot about the equity titles that I've claimed and salvaged and put into trust, and everybody can get that back. And as long as we all agree, you see, it's because all of the information that is behind the credits is registered at the land title offices. See, it's already there. You don't have to think. So somebody who's had $1 million worth of mortgages will get $1 million worth of coins. Somebody who's only had $100,000 will only get 100,000. That's in a way not fair when you consider the larger thing, but there's no other way to do it. And so we're just going to start with whatever your largest mortgage you've ever registered is. That'll be your initial disbursement of coins. And like I say, it's all free. It's got to be free, otherwise it isn't going to work. And you just have to come up with a way to get enough sort of ground floor financing so that you can put the time and effort into it that it needs, and get the right people. Because like I say, I wouldn't know how to, I used to do HTML 20 years ago, but it confused, I couldn't handle it both. It just interfered with my ability to read.
Wow.
Read. So
yeah.
So anyways, it's all there.
There's only so much that you can like kind of master, you know what I mean? And to set up a system that would, like, again, I'm only kind of wrapping my head around this, but I love the idea and the solution. And I feel like if there's, even 20 people that understand this to a high level that can work together to get it to another step and another step, then people can kind of adopt it and, work together, integrate other systems, because really everyone is looking for a solution, and people are looking for freedom. And when we're getting, enslaved through now our frigging quote unquote healthcare, death care system, the government, taxes, police, like the whole thing is just becoming so ridiculous. We need an opportunity. This is the biggest pain point humanity's ever had, because this is like us moving toward global enslavement, and that's the goal. Part of that is financial, one digital cryptocurrency, so it's all on there. They can shut off your if your Visa card stops working, and it's all crypto in this fake system backed by nothing with no actual value, they're going to totally own you. So what a fascinating idea. I'm going to definitely look more into it. And I hope that if, somebody in finance or kind of wrap their head around this, I would love to see where this goes, because I could see it being something that 5 or 10 years from now, it's like the thing you give to the future. This is based on something real. It makes more sense. It's community agreed upon. And all money's belief, right? The money is actually like the paper money is now useless. It's just a debt note, and we're just agreeing it has value. That's all that's happening. It's like, I agree that this piece of paper has value. That's it. So if we agree to something else that has value based on a system that makes sense, we understand, that's even better. So, man, my brain hurts. This is fascinating. I'm going to dive more into it. Is there anything that you wish that I'd asked or that you want to talk about before we close this up?
No, not really. It's like I say, it's I give a 20-hour seminar over a weekend, and it's hard to get in. I'm sorry if I sound disjointed and jumping all over the place and everything. It's just that there's no need to worry. There really is no debt. They've admitted it. And I found out where they buried the confessions. They're saying, well, okay, this is technically criminal, but we're not going to prosecute. This has been made illegal 100 times in the last 20 centuries, but we're going to pretend it's a new thing here so that nobody asks, oh, bankers aren't supposed to charge loan fees at all? Oh, what a weird concept. Until you read 1,000 years of history. No loan fees, no loan fees, no loan fees. Screw that, we're charging loan fees, because it leverages the debt. See, a 5% loan fee on a 20 or in a 30-year mortgage amortization can leverage the total cost of credit by 50%. See, you not only pay the bank, you pay them the 5% up front as an extra bonus for their own pocket to go have a party with. And then you end up paying them up to 30 years more interest on it. And then you repay or pay them the same fee again as pretended principal. So when you get everything, well, there's four things actually, but regardless, that's why you're not it's been made illegal. Like, you know, when they said that was what the issue was in 1981, when they said, well, what about a standby fee, Senator? You know, the rate of interest being infinite would surely be above 60%. Could not the bank be charged with charging a criminal rate of interest for a standby fee? And like I said, well, theoretically, yes, but that's why we're going to require the permission of the Attorney General for criminal prosecutions. Now, they made it sound like it was some weird, bizarre technicality that had never come up before. But you've got a litany for 300 years of Parliament repeatedly making it illegal for banks to leverage through loan fees. It's contrary to the accounting laws. It's not, you know, if they could get away with it to the nth degree, they would say, oh, yeah, your mortgage is for $500,000, and over 25 years, you're going to pay a total of another 500,000 for a grand total of 1 million. So what we've done is we've taken the 500,000 in advance as interest, so that you get nothing, and all you have to do is pay us the 500,000 back over the 25 years. See, it doesn't make any sense, does it? No, it's because interest and time are inseparable. You can't start playing with them and say, well, you know, if we have to wait for the actual passage of the time for us to claim our interest on the time on the amounts, then that's really a drag. I'd like a new Mercedes today. So here's what we're going to do. I'll loan you I'll loan you $1 million or $800,000 today at 10%, as long as you give me a registered security and you swear under oath and penalty of perjury that I've loaned you $1 million at 8%. Plus, you give me a $200,000 kickback under the table by a separate side agreement that we don't need to mention in the registered security. Does that sound like a criminal act to you?
Yep.
Yeah. How about 14 of them, including money laundering and racketeering? That is a basic business model of the banking system throughout the world, and there's nothing we can do about it because the biggest beneficiaries and cross-beneficiaries are the legal profession, whose biggest source of income are the kickbacks from the falsified securities that they then register for the banks at the land title office. It's a real nice club.
Jeez.
You rob my customers and I'll rob yours. We both get rich and screw the masses. You know, anyways, it's like, it's entertaining as hell to sort of just watch the psychiatry of it, because these people are batshit crazy, but the richer you are, the more batshit crazy you are. And that can only go on for maybe 50, 60 years, but we're heading towards the edge of a cliff, I'm afraid.
Wow. Well, you just put it in more detail that I've ever heard. And well, it's nice to know that you found some sort of solution. And I feel like people are waking up to this, and that's all that's required is the participation to look for something better, look for something that is based on equity, right? What's just and fair, what's equitable, based on values and morality and truth, you know, and the whole system is built on deceit and criminality. And the higher up you go into the, you know, and it is the banking, the international banking cartel, it's a thing. So they've got way too much power to circumvent it. So we need to take our energy out of it and put it into something else, anything else, you know, and that's where we get our power back. So this has been mind-blowing, very dense, but I appreciate it. And I just appreciate your work and putting those systems together. Where do people find out more about you and your work and your articles? And if they want to connect, where do they go?
I'm trying to put everything up on Wherex, and you can download everything, which I would suggest to people they should probably do very soon, because I don't know how long it can stay up there. There's some pretty sensitive stuff here that would just blow a lot of people's minds. And so it's the servers in South Africa. I don't know if it's fairly safe, but I mean, there's no problem with the server. It's just as far as them shutting it down remotely. But the two that you should read for sure are the mortgage payment abatement advisory, which I will put up before tomorrow morning.
Okay.
And the other one is the money lending my butt, or it was on credit reinsurance versus money lending. That one is up there on the menu too. And as I say, I tried to take 10,000 pages of research, and I was able to condense it to 16. It's really good. It's probably the finest thing I've ever written. And
which one's this?
The one on
the abatement.
Well, both actually. They're both pretty close. They're both under 20 pages, so that or no, I shouldn't say that. But it's an easy. Either one will take you about half an hour to read, and they'll blow your mind.
I'll check it out. Check it out. Well, and I advise everybody to check it out as well, because like it's the participation and the knowledge. That's what's required. We need to put some effort into this. So I just appreciate all your work, and Eaton's. That's the flash of the past for me. So very fascinating stuff. People check out the website. Thank you so much for your work, and I hope that that this solution or other ones come together. You get the team you need, and we just exit. We move
exactly.
I'll participate tomorrow. So
all right,
let's get some help. But thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you, and I appreciate all your work.
Oh, thank you. Have you? Nice talking to you.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch. Thanks, guys, for watching. Check out the website.